You wake up at 4 a.m. in a cell that's 6 feet by 8 feet, sharing it with 3 other men. There's no toilet, just a bucket in the corner that hasn't been emptied in 2 days. You haven't showered in a week. Your breakfast is barley porridge mixed with ash and beans. It tastes like dirt. You eat it anyway because you need the calories. In 6 hours, you'll walk into an arena where 50,000 people are screaming for you to die. And statistically, there's a 1 in 5 chance they'll get what they want. This is day one as a Roman gladiator. And you're already failing. Here's what Hollywood got completely wrong. Gladiators weren't heroic warriors choosing glory. They were slaves, prisoners of war, and criminals forced into combat as entertainment. The Colosseum wasn't a battlefield. It was a slaughterhouse with an audience. And the men who fought there didn't die with honor. They died screaming while 50,000 Romans cheered and bet on how long it would take. This is why you wouldn't survive one day as a gladiator, what the training actually involved, and why even if you somehow survived the arena, the life afterward would destroy you anyway. Let's start with how you become a gladiator. Less than 1% of gladiators chose this life. A convicted criminal, sentenced to death, or a slave sold to a ludus, a gladiator training school. If you're a prisoner of war, you've already survived one impossible scenario. Rome just conquered your homeland. Your army was destroyed. You watched your friends die. Now you're chained in a line with hundreds of other prisoners, marching to Rome. The journey takes weeks. No medical care. Minimal food. People die of infection, dehydration, and exhaustion. You're walking past corpses every day. About 30% of prisoners die before reaching Rome. If you survive the march, you're sold at a slave market. Strong, young men go to the gladiator schools. Everyone else goes to mines, fields, or brothels, which is actually worse than the arena because it's slower death. Here's the selection criteria that determines if you fight. Height 5'8" inches or taller. Age 18-35. No major injuries. Good teeth, which indicates overall health. If you meet these requirements, congratulations, you've been selected to train for public execution. If you don't meet them, you're going to the mines where you'll die in 6 months from lung disease. You arrive at the ludus. This is where gladiators train, eat, sleep, and wait to die. It's run by a lanista, a gladiator trainer who owns you like property. Your life has 3 purposes: train, fight, survive, in that order. Day 1 starts at 4 a.m. You're woken by guards hitting the bars of your cell with clubs. You have 10 minutes to use the communal latrine, which is a stone bench with holes cut in it where you shit in front of 30 other men. There's no privacy. There's no toilet paper. You use a sponge on a stick that everyone shares. Get used to it. Breakfast is at 4:30 a.m. Barley, porridge. Sometimes beans, sometimes ash mixed in because Romans believed it strengthened bones. It doesn't. It's just cheap filler. You eat it anyway because you're burning 4,000 by 5,000 calories per day in training, and this is your only food until evening. Training starts at 5 a.m. and continues until noon, 7 hours straight. No breaks except for water. Here's what that training actually looks like. You practice with a wooden sword called a rudis. It weighs twice as much as a real sword, about 4-5 pounds. Why? So when you fight with a real weapon, it feels light. You swing this wooden sword at a wooden post called a palace for hours. Overhead strikes, side strikes, thrusts, the same movements thousands of times. Your hands blister within the first hour. Those blisters have ripped open and infected. There's no medical care for blisters. You wrap them in cloth and keep training. By week 2, your hands have formed calluses so thick you can barely feel the sword handle. But here's where it gets worse. After sword training, you practice with a weighted shield. The training shields weigh 30-40 pounds, double the weight of combat shields. You hold this shield up for hours while your instructor hits it with weapons, teaching you to absorb impacts. Your left arm is screaming. Your shoulder is on fire. You hold the shield up anyway because if you drop it, you get beaten. Then comes sparring. Real combat practice with other trainees using wooden weapons. No padding, no safety gear. You're fighting at full speed because the lanista wants to see who's skilled and who's going to die immediately in the arena. People get injured constantly. Broken bones, concussions, knocked out teeth. One study of Gladiator remains found that 75% had healed fractures from training. Not from combat, from training. You're getting injured before you ever set foot in the Colosseum. Lunch at noon is the same as breakfast. Barley porridge, water. You have 1 hour to eat and rest. Then training resumes at 1 p.m. Tall and strong, Murmillo, short and quick, Threx, lean and fast, Retiarius. Your fighting style is determined by your physical attributes because the lanista is optimizing his investment. He paid for you. He's trained you. He wants you to win so he gets paid. Training ends at 5 p.m. You can barely walk back to your cell. Dinner is beans and vegetables. Sometimes meat. If you've impressed the lanista, usually not. Then you sleep. On a stone platform with a thin mat, no pillow, no blanket in summer, one thin blanket in winter. Your cell fits 4 men in 48 square feet. It smells like sweat, shit, and fear. You'll sleep here for 3 months while training. If you survive training, you fight. If you survive fighting, you come back here and train more. But here's the psychological torture nobody talks about. You know your death date. Not exactly when, but you know it's coming. The lanista tells you when you're scheduled to fight. 2 weeks means you have 14 days to live unless you win. Every morning you wake up, you count days. The fight gets closer. The fear builds. You can't escape it. You can't avoid it. You just wait. Fight day arrives. You've survived 3 months of training. You're in the best shape of your life. Your body is a weapon. None of it matters because you're about to experience psychological terror that no training can prepare you for. You wake up at 3 a.m. Can't sleep anyway. You've been awake for hours listening to your cellmates. Wondering if this is your last night, guards take you to a holding area under the Colosseum. It's dark, damp, and smells like blood because the previous fight's corpses were dragged through here. You wait in the hypogeum, the underground tunnels beneath the arena. You can hear the crowd above you, 50,000 people. They're already cheering, and it's 8 a.m. because the morning events are starting. Those are the executions, criminals fed to animals or forced to kill each other with no armor or training. You listen to people die for 3 hours while waiting for your turn. Around 11 a.m., the gladiator fights begin. Real sword this time, sharp, balanced, deadly, feels light after months with the weighted rudis. They give you your armor. If you're a Murmillo, you get a full helmet, arm guard, leg guard, and large shield. You get a shoulder guard, and that's it. They lead you through the tunnels to the elevator platform. This is a wooden platform operated by a pulley system that lifts you up through the arena floor. It's mechanical theater. You emerge from below like you're rising from Hades. The crowd loves it. The noise hits you first. 50,000 people screaming. Some are cheering for you. Most are cheering for your opponent. You can't hear yourself think. The sun blinds you after hours in darkness. The arena floor is sand mixed with blood from morning executions. It's already 95 degrees, and you're wearing metal armor. Your opponent enters from the opposite side. If you're a Murmillo and they're a Threx, you have the advantage. Your shield counters their curved sword. If you're a Retiarius and they're a Secutor, you're in trouble. They're designed to hunt you. The editor, the official running the games, signals start. No speech. No ceremony. Just fight. Here's what happens in your first real combat. All your training vanishes. Your instructor taught you technique in a controlled environment. This is chaos. Your opponent is trying to kill you. The crowd is screaming. The sun is blinding. Your helmet limits vision to a narrow slit. You're overheating in armor. Your heart is pounding so hard you can hear it over the crowd. Gladiator fights lasted 10-15 minutes on average, not hours like in movies. 10 minutes of maximum intensity combat. Every movement costs energy. Your muscles are burning. You're hyperventilating inside your helmet. The armor that protected you in training now feels like it's suffocating you. If you're winning, the crowd cheers. If you're losing, they scream for your blood. The editor watches. He decides if losing fighters die or get mercy. That decision is based on politics, money, and entertainment value, not your skill or bravery. Here's the survival rate reality. Historical records suggest 10 to 20% of gladiator fights ended in death. That sounds survivable until you do the math. If you fight 10 times, which is standard for a trained gladiator, you have a 90% chance of dying in one of those fights. If you fight 20 times, you're almost certainly dead. 40, sometimes 50 times. Flamma, a famous gladiator, fought 34 times and survived. He's famous because that was extraordinary. Most gladiators died before their 10th fight. Let's say you survive your first fight. You've beaten the odds. The crowd is cheering. The editor gives the missio signal. You're spared. You walk out of the arena alive. You won. You go back to your cell. Same 6x8-foot space. Same stone bed. Same barley porridge. Nothing changes except now you know you have to do it again, and again, and again, until you lose. The psychological damage is permanent. Modern studies of combat veterans show that repeated life-or-death situations cause lasting PTSD. You just killed someone or watched someone die while 50,000 people cheered. Then you go back to a cell and wait to do it again. There's no therapy, no support, no processing trauma, just training and waiting for the next fight. Just hope it doesn't go septic. That broken rib from training never healed properly. Now it hurts to breathe. You're competing, injured, and you can't escape. Gladiators were slaves. Your property. The lanista owns you until you die. Earn enough victories to buy freedom almost never happens. Or become too injured to fight, at which point you're worthless and discarded. Some gladiators survived long enough to retire. Maybe 5% made it 10 years. These men were crippled, chronic pain, missing body parts, psychological trauma. They were given a rudous wooden sword as a symbol of freedom. Then they usually became trainers because they had no other skills and nobody would hire a former gladiator for normal work. Let's get personal. You're watching this on a phone or computer. You've never experienced real violence. You've never killed anyone. You've probably never been in a serious fight. You've never gone a week without showering. You've never eaten the same meal twice a day for months. You've never slept on stone. You've never been owned by another human. Your body isn't prepared. The average person today can't do 50 push-ups. Gladiators trained 11 hours per day doing movements that would destroy your shoulders, forward back, and legs within a week. You'd be injured before you learned basic sword technique. Your mind isn't prepared. You've been raised in a society that values individual rights and personal safety. Gladiators were property with no rights. The psychological adjustment from free person to object that fights for entertainment would break you before the first fight. You lack the survival instinct that slavery creates. These men fought because death in the arena was preferable to alternatives. You fight, or you're executed worse. You fight, or you're sold to mines where you die slowly. The gladiators who survived weren't brave. They were desperate. You don't have that desperation because you've never needed it. And here's the final truth. Even if you were physically capable, even if you could handle the training, even if you survived your first fight, you'd still die eventually, because the math is unbeatable. 10 to 20% death rate per fight, compounding probability, means you die. It's not if, it's when. The gladiators who survived dozens of fights weren't lucky, they were statistical anomalies. The human equivalent of winning the lottery multiple times. Neither am I. Neither is anyone watching this. We like to think we'd be the hero who survives. We watch Gladiator and imagine we're Maximus, skilled, brave, triumphant. The reality is, you'd be the guy who dies in the background of the crowd scene that nobody remembers. One of thousands who entered the arena and didn't leave. A statistic. A corpse dragged through the gate of death while the crowd was already cheering for the next fight. That's not cowardice. That's reality. Gladiators died because the system was designed to kill them. No amount of personal strength, skill, or determination changes that. The only winning move was never entering the arena, and you didn't get to choose.